my television. Time to join the conversation.
To fight, to conquer, to thrive, I came to win, to survive, to prosper, to rise, to fly.
We need people that we can look out our windows and say, hey, that's a positive role model.
When I gave birth to my daughter, that was a whole new chapter of my life. And it also it made me think differently. It made me see the world differently. It made me just rethink a lot of things, reprioritize stuff. Things that, you felt were so highly important, just kind of was like, that's nothing.
The most recent defining moment, and perhaps that was when I had the heart attack. Because at that point, I realized I was at death's door and that I had to make life-changing decisions. Then when I had to have heart surgery, I went to church the Sunday before the surgery, and the watchword for that week was, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. And I felt that was there not as a coincidence, but perhaps it was a statement that was speaking to me directly.
Being the first executive director, female executive director of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce is a tremendous feat. When I took on the role, I did not see gender. I saw myself professionally progressing into another role. I saw that the chamber had a need and I could have fit the need based on my qualifications and my experience at the time. And I went in it, started running from day one. Over the years, persons would have asked me the same question you've asked. And the ceiling to me is just one other thing to do in life. I remember at some point I was answering some questions at a women's conference, and I simply said, a woman's success, or a woman in the boardroom, etc., a lot of it has to do with what she can do, not necessarily what her gender is, and I still maintain that position.
I was in a job at a place in my job where I didn't like it. I was very unhappy. No, this is several years ago, and I resigned. And I resigned for the wrong reasons. I resigned out of frustration, resigned out of anger, resigned because I felt as though I was in a dead end, I was going nowhere. And someone who was very senior to me called me in and said, Lisa, I understand you've done this. I want you to pull it back. And he said to me, life is like cricket. Forget the West Indies now. Don't worry about that part. He said, you got to stand at your wicket and you have to bat. It doesn't matter whether you get a bouncer bowled at you. It doesn't matter if they're bouncing for your head. You stand at your wicket and bat. And you bat until you can bat no more. And then you move on to the next thing. But you don't let anyone move you out of that space until it's time for you to move. And out of that experience, I learned that sometimes we're in difficult spaces, sometimes we're facing difficult situations, and out of frustration we want to give up. And we decide we give other people the power to make decisions for us. And I've never allowed anyone to do that for me ever again.
Let's go. Feeling myself. I'm feeling myself.
What motivates me is my drive and my passion for my business. I've always wanted to be a cake designer as well as a chef. And so for me, it's just to see people happy, my clients happy, and making my family happy, and just paving a way for a future.
Every time I think it gets too difficult, I may stop. Somebody whispers a story to me, or I see something that's so entertaining, and I was like, oh, that would make a good story, or that would make a good movie. And I would find myself writing again. So I would just say being here in Barbados and being in this surroundings, around these characters, around these stories our grandparents tell us, and seeing that they're not documented.
I would say my nieces and nephews, the next generation, babies. I remember when my friend Varia had her children, and I called her one day and said, I'm in a terrible mood, everyone's an idiot. And she says, go and find some children.
They just put you in a better mood immediately, and it's so true. Now that I have nieces and nephews, they very much motivate me. They motivate me to want to be better for them. They motivate me to keep going and striving so that, you know, there's a sense of legacy. I think the next generation is a great motivator.
The loss of my dad, because of how integral he was to not only my life, my brother's life, my mom's life, everybody's life who he came into contact with. That was probably the most difficult part, because that was my buddy, was my pal, that was my go-to, my jokester, my everything, you know. So it was bittersweet, because I knew he'd equipped me with everything I needed to survive in this life and make it great. But I still wanted my bud there, right?
I'm a very, very big critic of myself. I'm my biggest critic. So even if I know that I did a good job given certain circumstances, I would always think, I know I could do better. So my greatest difficulty is putting work out there that is not perfect, with the knowledge that something has to happen, you know, is a stepping stone you have to build. You know, you can't have the exact and perfect thing each time. If not, you won't have anything at all.
I've had difficulties, great difficulties, when I look back. And at the time at which they're happening, you figure, oh, woe is me, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, all the rest. But I'm the sort of person that very quickly you move forward. You stop, as they say in the fireman's drill, you stop, you roll, you find a clear space and you move forward. I've learned that you find a lesson in every difficulty, and once you focus on that lesson, what is the good? And there's always some good coming out of a trial or a travail. You focus on the good and you move forward, then it becomes less of a difficulty and more of a life lesson.
One of my personal difficulties is organization. You know, I'm a bit of a creative and I have an organized chaos, but I get very annoyed and frustrated with myself that I can't keep myself more organized. I would like to be. That has been a lifelong struggle. Still haven't conquered that one.
It was during the time I was doing my PhD I found my 5th gear. And I don't know if you know what I mean when I say that, is that ever elusive quality that we all have. That intangible je ne sais quoi that is inside of us, but it's only during extreme moments of adversity that we find it. It is the fight or flight switch. And when I was doing that, I stopped believing in myself. I thought I had bitten off more than I could chew, and every day I would say I was going to give up. And there was just something inside of me that I decided, it had a lot to do with my dad, because I think even after I stopped believing in myself, he continued to believe in me, and I held on to his belief. In those dark moments when I realized I only had myself to depend on, because nobody else could come and do it, I had to do it myself. And actually pushing through and seeing it through to its logical conclusion, I learned a very valuable lesson that I've taken with me for the rest of my life. That there's nothing I cannot overcome. That there's no challenge that if I dig in, and find that 5th gear that I now know exists, because up to that point I didn't know what it was. And there are many things I've done since then that I don't think if I had gone through that journey or experience my PhD, I probably would have given up or fallen to the wayside. But because of that, I have the confidence of knowing inside of myself there's nothing I cannot do. There's nothing I cannot overcome. That I am a warrior.
Being able to bear some. We've tried several occasions with no success. And I can just remember the day when my son Ethan came out. Was like, not just, I mean, yes, my pressure was very, very high. I almost died in the experience. But seeing him alive and seeing that it could happen, seeing that we've come this far, I think that was, fighting over that particular hurdle was a blessing.
I'm not done yet. You know, I'm far from done. And, you know, there are a lot of people out there, quite a few people out there who would be like, well, Alice, she needs it done. She needs to stop. She's too old for this. She needs to just, you know, do something else. Or, no, I don't. You know, Patti LaBelle is still out there. Gladys Knight. Aretha Franklin. There's so many women out there who are in their 70s and 80s, and they're out there doing their thing and still performing and packing arenas and no, there's no way that I'm going to stop. Not at this point. No, there's still too much more for me to do, too much more for me to achieve, and I have to be one of those beacons out there for my daughter.
My mother told me, 2 eyes and only 1 mouth have you. The reason is you don't talk about all you see. 2 ears and only 1 mouth of you. The reason I think is clear that it will not do to talk about all you hear.
Criticism is not something that we are psychically or even genetically made up to accept. It hurts. But if you believe in you, you're able to do 2 things. You're able, once again, to find some space and take what is positive from it. Even if you don't admit to the person criticizing you, you know, when I think about it, you're really right. I really do talk too much. But you take that on and you begin talking a little less, or you begin, you just begin taking on board what the person said and put it to good use, because it's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you happier too, and more at peace with yourself. The bad criticism, you just dismiss it, quite frankly. And don't be afraid or don't be, hesitant to just dismiss it.
I get one with God, just me and Him, and I just try to push on and remember that this is something that I always wanted to do. This is a passion, this is a dream. So no matter what, don't give up.
In my life, I have found that I am best able to appreciate the advice I've been given in retrospect, many years later. And I think back to my mother, who's one of the wisest people I know. And she gave me 2 great pieces of advice. One was, don't look at how people treat you because you're young and beautiful. Watch how they treat other people to determine their character. So watch how they treat people in service, or helpers or cleaners who they may deem below them. Watch how they treat individuals, and then you can have a bit more of a sense of their own character. I really loved that advice. And the other thing she said, which I never understood at the time, was, my darling, life is about decisions. Very deep, huh? But only in retrospect I've been like, really and truly your life is defined by the decisions you make. Some good, some bad.
Just say yes, to a point. Sometimes we have a tendency to overthink things. Like, would you do this, would you do that, would you do this? And you start to go through this list of pros and cons. Just say yes and work it out when you get there.
Sometimes you may see that person walking down the street and you may think that they have it perfectly put together, but you have no idea what it has taken them to get to that point. Sometimes they've been through struggles that you can't even imagine. Sometimes they've had to walk roads that were completely dark and all alone. And you've never walked those roads yourself, but you see the end of their story, or you see a part of their story. You don't know what led up to that.
Turning off my television.
The Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union. This is where you belong. Over the years, we've cared for you to help you meet your needs. Trustworthy, dependable, so you can grow financially. The Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union. Excellent service, all values strong. Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union. This is where you belong.
Me time is so necessary, and luckily I found a brand new indulgence in 4 wonderful flavors. I love coffee, but let's be real, too much of it isn't good for your health. I've replaced most of my coffee intake with the cappuccino flavored indulgence milk when I am on the go.
A smile goes a long way. In fact, it may travel for miles. That's the power of kindness.
my television. Time to join the conversation. She got style, she's got vision. She's a lady on a mission. It's the Toni Thorne Show. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's the Toni Thorne Show. Yeah, 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 yeah. She's dedicated to her nation. She understands the situation. She's confident and she's courageous. She's not afraid of confrontation. It's the Toni Thorne.
Indulgent oil-sheen spray. This one is ideal for those ladies with their weaves, their remies, whatever you call it. This is wonderful. People who don't want the alcohol in the product, this is the one for you, the Indulgent Oil-Sheen Polish Spray.
People all over are savoring the aromatic goodness of the country's favorite tea.
Sometimes I get a good feeling.
Lipton is your brighter day in every cup. Enjoy the rich, uplifting taste and aroma. Perfect anytime, any place. Lipton Yellow Label. Get the feeling anytime, anywhere. And try our new green tea with superfruit.
Television.
Welcome to the Lipton sponsored Tea Time segment, and I'm Toni Thorne, and I'm joined by 4 amazing personalities this afternoon here at the beautiful Hilton Resort Barbados. To my far right, father and national artist Ishaka McNeil.
Hi, Toni.
Thank you so much for joining me. To my right, Christian and attorney at law, Mrs. Mowena Maynard. Thank you so much.
No problem.
To my left, Mr. Warren Barker, lawyer, stylist, and photographer. Thank you so much. You've been on the show for a season. Thanks for coming again.
Thank you for having me again, Toni.
To my extreme left, Miss Deona Brown, teacher, law student, and youth activist. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for having me, Toni.
Thank you. So we're going to go straight into the conversation because this is just a half-hour show. And the conversation will be centered around abortion. Pro-life, pro-choice. Do women have a right to abort babies? What's your opinion? I will start with Ishaka.
Here was the word, right, Toni? Abortion, wrong. As simple as it is, wrong. I believe strongly that if you abort a child, you're killing God's creation. And it's simple, flat line. If you have a problem with that, that is your problem. But this is the program. Abortion is wrong. Okay? God created each individual according to his likeness. And that's how he feels about it. Genesis 1:27 says, I create everybody in my own likeness. That's what God say, understand? And we got to live by that. God created everybody especially the way they are, and we got to live by that. That's my flatline point.
Mowena.
I agree with Ishaka. I think that the sanctity of life is important to God. He created life, he gave life, and he's the person who ultimately should decide whether a person should live or die. Whether that person is a baby in the womb, outside the womb, a normal human being, I think that is ultimately up to God.
Warren.
Well, while I respect and I understand their positions, first let me just say I don't think it's the place of a man to be able to speak on a woman's reproductive rights. Having said that, I was raised as a Catholic, and I was taught to believe that abortion was wrong. From a very early age, I saw, pieces of fetuses, I saw feet, I thought it was wrong. Until, of course, then I became a teenager. And then I was faced with the issues that teenagers are faced with. We have, obviously, sex, unwanted pregnancies, and I had situations where I had friends, or situations where then it wasn't so easy to then say that, they were committing murder when they had to make a choice with regards to, their own personal well-being. Because when you have a child and you're pregnant at 14 years old, you or yourself are a child. How are you going to be able to do this? Is your father going to be there? It's all well and good for somebody to say, God's creation, provided that suppose you don't believe in God, right? Everyone has their own belief system, and I respect theirs, and I think it's important and I respect their position. But say you're not of that persuasion and you don't have that religious belief, you are looking at the practical situation. When a woman decides to have a baby, the man, really and truly, he is one sperm. The woman, he's one sperm. He's one sperm until he proves himself as a father. Any man can create a child once he has viable sperm. Then, when 9 months goes, and he's there at the delivery and he's there through the child's life, then he's proven himself to be a father. Because we all know there are people who are people's fathers, person's fathers, but they're not the biological father. So I think, it's okay to say, have a child, but then when you have a child, who is going to be there for the child? I think ultimately, women need to be responsible for decisions regarding their bodies, and only women, because it's them carrying the child.
My position is one of pro-choice, but it comes with limitations. Not every situation warrants an abortion, but there are some that do. Illness, where a mother's life is threatened to have the baby, in those situations, which option do you choose? Do you choose your life or the baby's life? I mean, in situations with rape, there are situations that will arise where abortion is the reasonable or logical answer to the situation. So it's not every situation that I say, hey, yeah, let's have an abortion. But there are some that I believe warrant having an abortion. There are some people that abuse it. For example, I learned recently of a woman that had 22 pregnancies and 17 abortions. That is not right. Those situations I don't agree with. But on the other hand, you're faced with a situation where you could die if you have this baby. Your body physically cannot carry a baby. In those situations, abortion is the answer.
My thing is that something you have to make a decision before if you're going to get pregnant or not. Why put yourself in a position to get pregnant and then say, oh my God, I know you're sick, to then have an abortion?
So you're saying if you know that you are sick and if you have a child, it would make your sickness greater, why not have sex with a condom?
Yes.
Or as a 14-year-old,
yes.
Why have sex in the first
that's
place?
why it's so important to speak abstinence. It's so important to speak protection. I can't tell everybody, you know what? Don't go there and have sex. You understand?
You just talked about God and about God it being God's decision whether or not if I can have a child. I don't think I should be restricted. I don't think I should have to use a condom because I'm sick, or I should have to use any sort of. No, let me finish. I don't think I should. I think I should still have the opportunity to try to get pregnant. And if I do, then if I'm faced with circumstances, that's an option that I will take. But I am going to try to have the baby. There's nothing to say from the inception that I won't be successful in carrying the baby.
I want to answer your question because some people say that that's a selfish stance. That if you know that you, and I'm just asking, if you know that you are sick and if you have a child, you will eventually either have to abort the child because of your sickness. That's a selfish stance. What do you guys have to say about that?
We don't know. We don't know. And as long as there is that probability, you can't tell me that I can't.
But
I'm
if you have a medical challenge, I think your obvious thing would be to find out.
No, that's not
does the medical challenge
that's not the obvious
stop you from having a child, or can allow you to have a child? That's what you have to find out first. That is my ultimate.
I totally disagree. That's not the obvious thing.
So, Aishaka, I want to ask you a question. If you had a daughter, she was 14 years old and she was raped. She was a virgin, yeah, and she was raped and she got impregnated by that rape. A traumatizing situation. What would you do?
I'm going to go too far with you, Tony. I am not one who will say, all right, we get rid of this child because you get raped. Suppose that child is born and becomes a scholar before they become a lawyer, a doctor,
bank manager
that have a purpose in life. All right? People might come and slap me and tell me, big man, you talking bare nonsense because you try to get raped. You make she bring a child to see that child. She doesn't have to see the child. There's some other avenues that we could deal with to make sure that she's comfortable. All right? My value system is God has given each and every one of us life. He has put breath into us. He said we are fearfully and wonderfully made. So if we are that, why should we take it? Why should we take it?
I want to raise a point. I'm in a unique position in that I see parents with 10, 12, and 13 children that they cannot take care of. They bring them, they don't have clothes to put on their backs. They don't have food to put on their mouth. Why should a parent be allowed to have 10 and 20 and God knows how much other children and they can't take care of them?
if a woman wants to have 22 children, isn't that her choice, regardless of if she can afford to have the 22 children or not? I'm just asking.
Yes, it's her choice, but at the same time, the same way we have to be practical and look at the situations that she's faced with. Just now when we were talking about medical conditions and being sick, you have to give sometimes. I'm not saying there's always a probability that it won't or it can't, but you know for sure at that stage, you already have 15 children you can't take care of. It's not the possibility where we can have a healthy child. This is a situation where you know you don't have a house.
Okay.
The house that you live in doesn't have a floor.
So
how are you going to put a baby in that?
Okay, so I've known people that have had multiple children and then they decided to tie their tubes. What's the opinion on that? Do you think that that's playing God just as much as aborting a child, tying
I
tubes?
think those persons are taking the precautionary measures to not to put themselves in positions whereby that they will be struggling.
So that's also not playing God just as much as abortion?
I
don't think so, because you're not preventing. Well, I don't know about the whole thing, but thank God. But for example, my mother would allow me to say that she had her tubes tied after she had my sister, and that was a very strategic decision because she wanted 3 children. It wasn't about, I don't think it had anything to do with God. And like I said, we were raised as Catholics, so my mother really should have about 10 children, because there should be no contraceptions when you live as a Catholic. There's no abortion. There's nothing like that. But as I said, growing up and seeing other people, like I said, for me, I respect what Ishaka is saying. I mean, before I was very much like that. I did not believe in abortion at all. But to me, as it is right now, we may approach on things are liberal. I think like if there is abortion is legal in Barbados. Although there is an interpretation of the law which makes most abortions right now in Barbados illegal, because most practitioners don't follow the legislation, the correct procedure in terms of the timing and whatnot. The thing about it too is that this is just a discussion. This is his opinion. The truth is, people will still have abortions. The reality is, when we look at government trying to inflict legislation on people, it can actually backfire. For example, in the U.S., Texas, they tried to close. Not only that, but they tried to close the abortion clinics. They did, and guess what happened? They ended up having more late-term abortions, because guess what? The abortion clinics, they had to wait because the clinics were closed. So then they had to wait. And I think as a pro-life person, you don't want any type of abortion, far less late-term abortion.
Morena, Christian and attorney at law. Yeah.
It's a good question for me to answer, right? There are 2 considerations as a Christian and as an attorney at law. And I have to be a Christian first before I'm anything else. True. God created life. We cannot get rid of that. He created a perfect world when he created the earth. That's what he envisioned. What happened is sin came in. And because of the presence of sin, you have a whole set of considerations that you would never have to have contemplated if there was no sin. You have children born, you said, out of wedlock. You have children who are born to 14-year-olds and 12-year-olds. I heard somebody talking about children born of rape, children born to people who have disabilities or are having disabilities inside the womb. All of those things are present because we have made choices. God gave us that choice, and because we have chosen sin, those things have come into play. Because of that, legislation has now come on stream to manage the situation. I mean, we can't just be pro-choice, we can't just be pro-life, we can't be anything. We all have to live in society together. This is where legislation has to come. You have to be, it's not for me to judge, as I said, it's for God to judge. Ultimately, that's what happens. You have the offenses against the person act. So first and foremost, it's death. You're killing a human being, that's murder, and under the offenses against the person act, it's not allowed. But then you came with the Termination of Pregnancy Act, where there are certain circumstances under which a person can terminate a pregnancy. If it's a hindrance to your life, doctors are supposed to make that decision. For a medical practitioner to give that opinion, there are timelines. If it's 12 weeks and under, you have one doctor giving that opinion. You have 12 to 20 weeks, 2 doctors giving that, the opinion. You have over 20 weeks, because that's a child who's no more developed and everything. 3 doctors have to give. It has to be done in in a hospital designated by a minister. But there are regulations in place to manage the situation. So for a doctor to say, okay, you know what, if you carry this child to term, you're not going to live. But I think ultimately that's for, because I think that baby can live. Miracles happen every day. You see things happen where you don't have, the opposite can happen, you can die, but that child might live. I think ultimately it's for God to decide. The law has, is put in place to regulate everything. And I think that is a discussion that will never end.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me. That has been Tea Time, and this is the Toni Thorne Show, and you have a great night. Tune in next week. Thank you.
Turning off my television.
My mother said that between me and you, the old thing,
is Carol Roberts, and you're watching the Carol Roberts.